Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation on making the switch from boss to coach, the 4 essential skills. My name is David Witt. I'll be your host today. I'm speaking to you from the Ken Blanchard Company's headquarters in San Diego, California. It is my pleasure to introduce our subject matter expert today, Madeleine Blanchard. Madeleine is the co-founder of coaching services here at the Ken Blanchard Companies. Madeleine is also the co-creator of the Ken Blanchard Company's Coaching Essentials program. Madeleine is an accomplished author. She is the author of the book, Leverage Your Best, Ditch the Rest. She's also the co-author of the book, Coaching in Organizations. Madeleine, thank you so much for being here with us today to take a look and learn more about making the switch from boss to coach.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. So excited to be here. Maybe you can help me move the slide since it's not doing what it's supposed to do. There you go. Hello. Here is what we're going to be talking about today, the basics of performance management, because the switch from boss to coach actually requires that people be a completely decent boss to begin with. So we're going to cover that very, very briefly. It's going to be kind of a speed run-through of Blanchard's approach to leadership and management. And then we're going to spend the rest of our time really detailing down into how coach training really makes it easier for the boss to provide more support and for all of and use coaching for all of the conversations that aren't necessarily connected to performance. We're going to do, again, a quick touch on the 4 essential coaching skills, and then I'll turn it back to Dave, and he can talk to you a little bit about how to access our materials, our content, our programs, et cetera. So I can tell you for those of you who have no sound, our folks are working on that here, but of course you can't hear me say that, so I'm not sure what the point is. So sorry about that. So Zenger Foltman did research a while back, and I don't think things have changed that much since they did this research. But the fact is the average leader doesn't receive training until they're about 10 years into their careers. And for many people who have management jobs, they have that experience and they know that. And then Blanchard did some research a while back about the main process gaps that people experience from their managers around performance management. And if you Google it, there's a ton of research out there. Gallup just came out with a bunch of research about engagement and performance management process gaps. There's a lot of research being done, but, you know, do we really need the research to show us that, first of all, it's really hard to be a good manager, and even good managers are having a hard time doing it all? So let's take a look at what it means, at least to us here at the Ken Blanchard Companies, to be a good boss. So it is our experience based on research that the 3 main skills of the situational approach to performance management, which is what we're talking about when we talk about the boss part of the job, are goal setting, diagnosing, and matching. So let's do a little bit of a deep dive into this. Goal setting is the first skill. And everybody's seen the SMART model: specific, motivating, attainable, relevant, trackable. Maybe you've seen it as STRAM. It doesn't really matter. The question to ask as a manager is, are the goals clear? Do people actually know what's expected of them? And research shows the answer on that is usually no. Are the goals compelling? Meaning, do I wake up every morning knowing what my goals are and kind of excited about going to work and trying to achieve them? And then the third thing is conversationally based. So I am in communication with my manager about my goals. So whatever model you use, the key is, do people know what the job is, what a good job looks like, and do they know the timelines involved in getting the job done? And what's extraordinary is how often people aren't really even that clear about what the job is and what a good job looks like. So let's take a look at the second skill, diagnosing where people are on the continuum of being really, really good at a given task or goal. And we call that development level. Development level is a combination of two key factors. Competence, do I actually know what I'm doing? Have I done it before? Have I seen it done? And commitment. To what extent am I really committed and confident, motivated and confident about achieving this goal? So diagnosis is really important because it's the boss, the manager's job to help people move from low competence, meaning I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm excited about trying, through that moment where everybody, it happens to everyone, hits development level 2, as we call it, where they're basically thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good enough to do this. I'll never be good enough to do this. What was I thinking? To a place of moderate to high competence, maybe variable commitment, where the employee might be thinking, okay, I think I'm going to be able to get this. And then finally, high competence, high commitment. This is a person who basically crushes that task or that goal. Now, we call this the Blanchard approach to leadership, or SL2. And some people I can see in the chat. I'm trying not to look at the chat because it's distracting, but I did see that some people are recognizing this. Mm-hmm. So the third skill is matching. And what we mean by that is that the boss or the manager provides the right leadership style based on the development level on the task or goal. And there are two main behaviors for this: directive behavior, setting the goals, showing, telling you how, this is the job, this is exactly how it needs to be done, step by step. I'm going to check in with you to make sure you've got it. And supportive behaviors. I'm listening to you. I'm facilitating self-reliant problem solving. How do you think this should be done? If I weren't here, what would you do? And then acknowledging when someone is kind of really getting it or they've really gotten it. So this is what we think of as matching. Why match? Well, 54% of bosses or managers use one style naturally. So my preferred style is a style 4, where I basically agree with you on what needs to be done and then leave you alone. Is that my personality? Probably just go, do it, leave me alone. But it's also, I think, years and years of working with independent professional contractors who actually are expected to know how to do their jobs. 1% of managers use all 4 styles naturally. 1%. Okay, that's such a tiny, tiny percent of the population. Now, 11% use 3 styles naturally, which is great. And then 34% use 2 styles naturally. So that basically means the rest of us need to really think it through and work hard to match, to meet people where they are. So let's take a look at this model that I've just introduced you to, some of you, and others that you're maybe, very familiar with. When people have low competence, they need a directing style. So what is the job? What does a good job look like? What do you do first? What do you do second? Do it this way, not that way. High direction. All right? So our second style we call coaching. Now, has this caused endless confusion in the marketplace?
Yeah.
Yes, it has. And I'm going to address that in a moment. So when we talk about coaching skills for managers and leaders, we're not talking just about what we think of as a style 2, which in the model is re-energizing, reteaching, doing a lot of listening, talking, what I could think of as talking people off the ledge, right? But it is, all your coaching skills are really helpful when you need to do a style 2. And then we have supporting. So we're building confidence and commitment. Keep going. You're doing great. You can trust yourself, and on and on. And then finally, the delegating style. And so my preferred style is style 4. It's my favorite thing in the world to do, to say, hey, do this, do that, do this, do that. I'm going to go away and come back, and everything's going to be perfect. So, and isn't it, don't we all dream of having employees who, with whom we can use a style 4 exclusively? Okay, maybe not you, but me. Okay, so, but we do, as bosses and managers, strive to move people to development level 4 where they're really adding value to the organization. So how does it work when we teach coaching essentials, which is a mindset, a skill set, and a process, in conjunction with SL2? Basically, you can use all the coaching approach with SL2 on all the styles, but we're going to use it more when we're needing a style 2 or a style 3. So for those of you who've had some confusion about that, that is our answer. Both models, our SL2 model, so what the boss needs to do all day, every day, goal setting, diagnosing, matching leadership style to development level, and then the coaching process, they both use conversations as a method for building relationships and managing others. And what I would say is that the coaching conversations are really going to be for all of the conversations that SL2 isn't the immediate solution for. All right? Because sometimes you need to have a conversation with an employee, or an employee comes to you with a topic that they want to discuss with you, and you don't have a task or a goal to pin the conversation to. Maybe you can get there, But that's when you really want to use the coaching process. And we're not going to do a deep dive into the coaching process today. There are other webinars about that. We are going to talk about the skills today. But first, let's talk about how we define coaching here at the Ken Blanchard Companies. So we say that coaching is a deliberate process that uses focused conversations to create an environment that results in accelerated performance and development. So it's a lot of words. We've spent, let's just call it 20 years developing this definition. We spent the first 5 years changing it on a daily basis because we would get feedback from clients. But this definition has really stood the test of about the last 10 years. So the key words here are deliberate process, meaning it's a set of steps that you can use on a regular basis again and again that isn't accidental. So a lot of people have great coaching conversations, but they don't necessarily know what made it good. So the key is having a process that you can follow every time and know you're just going to nail it. Focused conversations. It's always a conversation, right? It's always a dialogue. It can be over text. It can be 2.5 minutes in a hallway. It can be over the phone. It can be an official sit-down. It can be a conversation that you have walking through the airport, but it's still a focused conversation. And it creates an environment in which the person being coached is going to grow. So we say here accelerated performance and development. But really what we're looking for from a coaching conversation is that people are going to have an epiphany. They're going to have an aha moment. They're going to have the, oh, I could have had a V8 moment where they're like, oh, I see it. I get it. I can launch into action. It's going to encourage transformation. It's going to encourage people to move boldly and courageously into the future. This is where the rubber meets the road with all of this coaching stuff that you've been hearing about. And what we know is that regular communication around development, so having those coaching conversations is essential. And in fact, it's the single most important managerial competency that separates the great managers from the managers, okay? Because it's one thing to help people just get the job done. It's another thing to help people know that their manager has their back, has their interest at heart, has their development on the radar screen. And in fact, we have our own research about the way coaching skills impact trust and employee work passion. It has a large positive effect on positive affect. Sorry about that. But basically, affect means how do I feel about my job? And it has a huge positive impact on trust, which together make a huge impact for the good on work intentions. Do I intend to do my best every day? Do I use my discretionary energy? Do I say nice things about the organization? Do I intend to stay? Am I a good organizational citizen, or am I plotting to steal the toilet paper and get as much as I can get? So we have a great white paper on this. It's really interesting research. So anyone who's interested in the white paper about performance gaps or this one will give you a poll at the end and ask you which of these items you would like to receive from us, and we're happy to share this. But this research, based on solid, valid, established coaching competencies in managers and leaders, is really interesting research. And for those of you out there in HR, OD, training and development, leadership development land who need some ammunition to support teaching coaching skills to your managers and leaders, this is the white paper for you. All right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about the 4 essential coaching skills that link to these supportive and directive behaviors that you've seen in the SL2 model. So this is assuming that the manager is already a good boss, good at goal setting, good at diagnosing development level, good at matching development level. And these skills, this coaching stuff, is for when you need to use a style 2 or a style 3, or you're really having conversations about something other than goals and tasks. So our 4 essential coaching skills, and anyone who has the least bit of experience with coaching are going to find these fairly familiar, because we're not reinventing the wheel here, people. Coaching is coaching is coaching. And if you look at the coaching competencies on the ICF website, International Coach Federation, which is the largest coaching association, internet global coaching association, you will find competencies that match these. You'll find additional competencies, but so listen to learn, not just listen, but listen to learn, because that changes everything. Inquire for insight, not your own insight, but the other person's insight, the insight of the person being coached. Tell your truth. So it's tell your truth, not tell the truth, because just because you're a manager or a leader doesn't give you the big black book in the sky where the truth is recorded. And I'm saying that kind of a little bit facetiously, because the truth is what we decide it is. So it's your truth. And then finally, express confidence. Let's take a look at listen to learn. So who out there, and you can go ahead and write in the chat if you're so moved, anyone who really thinks they're a great listener?
All right, so let's see who wants to claim that. I am a great listener. If you consider yourself a great listener, proudly type in the word yes in the chat box and then hit the send button, and let's see. You know, just folks, we'll see who wants to kind of claim that, because that's a great skill to have. And we know there are good listeners out there.
Yeah, ask your children or your spouse. I'll never forget that 20 years I've been a professional coach, and my husband said to me, "You are not a good listener." And I was like, "Oh, what?" You know, it was the meanest thing he could ever say to me. So, you know, for those of you who say no, I appreciate that. And even for those of you who say yes, thank you. Thank you for owning it. Because you know what? It's not easy. It's not easy to be a great listener, but it's a lot easier if we go into listening with the intent of being influenced. So we think of listening as having 3 parts. First, we have to listen for something new, something different. We have to fight our natural tendencies because we develop listening habits. And I'm going to ask you what your listening habits are in just a moment. And instead, we have to listen for the heart of the matter and then choose listening responses. So there are specific kinds of responses that go with good listening. So instead of listening for what we normally might listen for, we can listen for new things. Significant context, obstacles. What does the person already know? Or what is the person assuming? We can listen to learn things about the person. Where is their energy? Where is their emotion? What is their interaction or communication style? What do we know about how this person operates that might be helpful? And what is needed to move forward? So we're always listening when we have our coaching hat on to what's going to move this person forward. So now we're going to ask you, and I'm going to turn this over to our friends here who are the technical experts, but we all have listening habits. So Dave, take it away.
You know, we've opened up a poll here we'd love to have you participate in, and this is where we're actually looking for what is the number one way that you listen. And of course, we've given you a couple of options here. There's 5 of them. Would you say that you most often listen for errors in what the person is saying? If that's true, go ahead and choose A.
So people who are trained as engineers or attorneys, you know who you are.
And that's kind of a valuable skill, of course, you know,
yes.
for people who are, you know, in those fields. If you most often listen for chances to solve the problem, the classic man way of listening, go ahead and choose B.
Thank you, John Gray, right?
If you most often listen for how the situation affects me, choose C. If you most often listen for what I'm going to say as soon as I get the chance, go ahead and choose D. And if you listen, and I assume what you meant by this, Madeleine, because I found myself doing this, especially in group meetings at work, what are the things that might end up on my to-do list? If it's that type of listening, I'm guilty as charged on that. How about you? E, is that what that one's about?
Well, it can be your grocery list, but it can also be, say, Dave, I'm listening to you, and you're talking about something you need to get done, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot. I need to get the same thing done.
There you go. So it could be that type of listening then. So go ahead and choose the response that most often describes how you listen. Once you've made your choice, A, B, C, D, or E, be sure to hit that submit button. That'll send the responses to us, and we'll get a chance to see what the group has decided.
You know, I guess we could have put an other here to ask, you know, if we didn't put it on here. So if you get a chance afterwards, go ahead. If it's other, what do you listen for?
That's great. Now, Madeleine, have you asked these questions to people before? Do you have a sense of which one will probably come up as the one that people have would admit to is the way that they listen to most often?
Oh, you know, when we teach the Coaching Essentials class, it's how to solve the problem.
Got it. Well, I'm looking at the results right now. We're seeing it. It looks like B, and B overwhelmingly. Wow, you called it.
Okay, I did call it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is what people listen for. They listen for how to solve the problem. It's probably especially when people think about listening in a managerial context.
Yeah. Cool. Well, and, you know, the biggest number is no answer at all. So maybe there are people who are just listening and multitasking, maybe doing their email, or my favorite way to multitask, shopping for shoes. But the key here is that we all have listening habits. And our habits, especially if you're a manager or a senior manager or a leader, have gotten us to where we are. And they're useful, right? So I'm not saying you shouldn't listen the way you already listen. I'm saying that if you're going to put the coaching hat on and you're going to use the coach approach, you need to expand your listening and listen for new things, because it's the only way to deepen and broaden yourself as a coach, okay? And you're also going to be listening for what are the best questions. So moving on to our next skill. Oh, no, I'm not moving on. This slide is things you might try listening for to expand or deepen your what you listen for. So context, assumptions, emotions, or energy. So I talked about this a little bit before. And I did see very briefly in the chat that people said, oh, they listen for context, which is good. That's a good thing. But if that's all you listen for, try listening for something else. Okay, notice your listening habits. Okay, now we're moving on to the second skill. So inquire for insight. Ask questions that draw out ideas from the other person. And the mark of a rookie coach is a lot of questions that the coach is asking to expand their own insight, okay? So if you find yourself asking questions to satisfy your own curiosity, then you're probably going down the wrong road, okay? Now, clarifying questions is another thing, okay? I'm not sure I understand. Is this what you're saying? Is this what you mean? That's a little bit different. But we're asking questions that are going to have people go, I hadn't thought about that. Okay? So how do we ask these questions? Open-ended questions. Now, we've heard this before, but the trap in the open-ended question is the open-ended question in the giving advice costume. Okay, so what does that sound like? Have you talked to Dave? Have you asked Dave what he thinks? Okay, so that sounds like an open-ended question because it's not, it's not do this, do that. But that's a yes-no answer, and you're really giving advice. Okay, so be careful of those questions. Avoid why questions. Now, this is an interesting one. We get more pushback on this than just about anything else that we teach because the knee-jerk reaction to ask why is so deeply embedded, and not just Western culture. This, as far as I can tell, is a global phenomenon. There's something about asking a why question that puts people on the defensive. And I believe the reason for that is that we act as if people should have the answer. And most people have no idea why. Now, if it's a basic question like, why did you move the coffee machine? Then the answer is going to be something obvious. Like, oh, that outlet stopped working. Oh, okay. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about why did you do it that way? How do you answer that? Because I'm an idiot? Because that's how I thought it should be done? There's no good answer to why. So it's better to ask a how or a what question and maybe have someone walk you through, okay, what was your thought process here? Just so I can get some insight. It just works so much better than why. And the questions are focused on moving forward. Always moving forward. Okay? So mark of a rookie coach, how do you feel about that? It's not relevant. It doesn't really matter. Okay? That's a therapy question. It's a Dr. Phil question. It's not moving us anywhere. So here's some little fun facts, little quick tips. Okay? One question at a time. One question at a time. We all have the habit of, okay, tell me about that. What were you thinking? What happened in the meeting? 4 questions all tumbled on top of each other, one question at a time. Just ask it and shut up. And it can be really short, so really brief. What else? Okay. Short and simple questions. Short and simple, not 3 sentences. People have forgotten the first sentence by the time you get to the third sentence. Questions are like bowling balls covered in Vaseline. You really just want to give them one and make it a small one. Here's an interesting one. If it isn't a powerful question, ask a different one. So if you ask a question and the person looks not inspired, but bewildered or stuck, or their face just closes, and you can hear when someone's face closes on the telephone, okay? You know what? Just say, okay, that wasn't a good question. Let me ask a different one. And then focus on moving forward. Have I said that before? I think I have. All righty. So let's talk a little bit about tell your truth. So this is the skill that covers the big question that a lot of people lump in with coaching, which is feedback. Dun, 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 dun. Feedback, right? A lot of people think coaching is giving feedback. Well, we don't think that. We think it can include giving feedback, but we think it can include so much more. So tell your truth is sharing relevant information, and it's not always pleasant. It's not always easy. It's why it's the third skill. We believe that the manager earns the right to tell their truth. The boss has to say, this is the job, this is what a good job looks like, do it this way, not that way. That's not feedback. It's just clear direction. But if you need to have a conversation about maybe wardrobe choices, attitude, then you're getting into tell your truth territory. And the manager earns the right to share observations, information. You have to be direct and brief. You have to avoid judgment and blame. And you really have to confirm that your impact matches your intention. So the assumption is you go into a coaching conversation with the best of intentions, right? I'm only thinking of you. I want what's best for you. All I really care about here is your success. But it's not always going to come out that way. So if something comes out of your mouth that you can see has brought the person up short, hurt somebody's feelings, caught them by surprise, negative surprise, which from a neuroscience standpoint, terrible things happen in the brain when you are criticized when you didn't expect to be criticized. Make sure that your intent and your impact match at the end of the conversation. So if you need to use your well-oiled reverse gear, if you need to back up, you need to back up. There's no shame in saying, wow, I did not expect that your feelings would be hurt. I am so sorry. Let's back up. Let's go back to the beginning of this conversation and start over. It is amazing how using that reverse gear can help both of you get back to a place in the conversation where the person who's being coached feels safe again and can hear and can be present in the conversation. You can tell when people have left the conversation, even if they're trying to hide it. So don't try to keep going. All right? All right. So here's a fun little test. It's your tell the truth, your truth test. So the first point is, do I need to say it, or do they really need to hear it? So if you just need to say it to move past your own attitude problem and get it off your chest, well, that's a good data point, right? Just keep it to yourself or find somebody else to say it to. Not at work. Your own coach, your spouse, your best friend, your dog. If it's really for them so they can be more successful, go ahead. Go ahead and share it. Is it likely to resolve itself if I don't say anything? And if it's like, yeah, this person knows. This person knows what happened. They saw it. They know they need to improve. I'm not going to pour salt on the wound. I'm just going to leave it be. Or if the person's oblivious, is it likely to continue or get worse? Then you have to intervene and say something. 3, could the information help the person succeed sooner? If you can see that a person is on a trajectory and they're moving toward where they need to go and they're going to be fine, keep it to yourself. If it really is going to help them, go ahead and say something. So that's your Tell Your Truth test. This has saved me a lot of time and a lot of heartache, this particular one, especially number 1. Because sometimes I just need to say it because I just need to say it. And that's not helping anyone. All right? Okay, moving on to our 4th skill, express confidence. And this is something that a manager who is using that coach approach can use constantly, all day, every day, to build self-assurance and enthusiasm. So we're looking for sincerity, specificity, genuineness, and really focused on the other person. So the first one here, I think you did an awesome job. Who is that about? Me. It's what I think. You did an awesome job. That's generic. It's vague. It's general. Boo. So we want the specificity, okay? It's about the positive results, not about what I think. It's about your product testing, your commitment, lots of specifics, okay? So the thing about expressing confidence, kind of a secret, is that it shows that the manager is paying attention. And honestly, if I could find a way to make that start with E, so it fit in with our LITE, light skills, which are kind of all over the globe in our products, I would call this last skill, pay attention. It's the number 1 human need, is to be seen, to be heard, and to be acknowledged. And this is really what this skill is all about. And it's different from just positive feedback, although I'm a big fan of that too. So what gets in our way of doing this? And these are the things that I've heard from people. Well, why should I do it for others? Nobody does it for me. And I get that, but just because you have a crappy boss doesn't mean that you need to be one. It's not the culture around here. I'm going to be Pollyanna, goody two-shoes if I behave that way. Well, great. So it takes courage. It makes you feel foolish. Well, step up is all I have to say about that. It doesn't occur to you. I get that. A lot of people didn't grow up in households where anybody expressed confidence in them. They've never had a coach. They've never had a boss that did it. So it doesn't cross your mind to do it. So stick a Post-it on your forehead if you have to. Set an alarm on your phone. Do whatever you need to do to think about it. Now, this is my favorite. I don't actually feel confidence in this person. So my question there is, why is this person working for you? If you don't feel confident that this employee is going to get where they need to get, I say, replace them. Sometimes people are in the wrong jobs. It happens. So, step up and get someone in the job that you do feel confident in. I know that sounds like all too easy, but Jim Collins said it best. You got to get the right people on the bus in the right seats. And if you don't have the right people in the right seats, trying to coach them is probably not what they need. You got to do all the boss stuff, get that confidence in the person, and then you can coach them. All right, so that is my story. I'm sticking to it. I'm going to turn it back over to Dave, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about how to get to us, how to get to our stuff, etc.
Madeleine, that was so much fun to get a chance, and thank you so much for kind of giving us first those basics of performance management on that front end, and then how to take this to a whole nother level by adding those 4 coaching skills on top of the basics of, setting goals with people, checking in with them on a daily basis, and, and kind of making sure that you are paying attention. I love that. I was remembering that Ken, in a book that he wrote with a famous American football coach, the American football coach said, the one thing I never want anybody to ever say about me, Ken, is that I wasn't paying attention.
Oh.
And so I just love the fact that you're highlighting that also. One of the things that we do want to share with you is a little bit, what are the next steps? You've learned now about what the 4 coaching skills are that could be built into a leadership development curriculum. We want to talk a little bit specifically about what else is in that Blanchard Coaching Essentials program. Well, first of all, you'll see here, it shifts people from their natural behaviors to that coaching mindset. And we talked about that early in the presentation today. It helps to build trust, and Madeleine shared the research paper that shows exactly how coaching skills lead to trust, which lead to positive work intentions. And I'll have that poll in just a minute so you can request that white paper. Then also, the Coaching Essentials program teaches the 4 specific coaching skills that can be applied immediately to any conversation. That's what we've talked in depth about today. People leave conversations with clear agreements, and then they know when and when not to use the coach approach. And that's really interesting, and that'll probably be the topic of a future webinar, because there's times when you've got to actually hold back a little bit and do more performance management as opposed to using a coach approach. Just a little bit of an idea how Coaching Essentials can fit into your overall leadership development program. We're guessing that you probably have got some sort of a program around your first-time managers. Maybe you've got a program in place around performance management basics. Maybe you've got something already in place about how to develop, grow people, have good conversations. Those are all programs that the Blanchard Companies has as a part of our curriculum paths also. What we're showing you here on this slide is just where Coaching Essentials might fit in, where you might do building trust. You might do the SL2 experience to get that performance management component nailed. Then you bring in Coaching Essentials as an advanced skill, and then maybe you move on to leading people through change. In some clients, they bring Coaching Essentials in at the beginning to set that mindset. Then they go to building trust. Then they go to the SL2 experience. And then maybe they go for a deeper dive on motivation. Many different ways that you can mix and match, and the ways you can add a Coaching Essentials component into your overall curriculum. As we start to get ready to move into Q&A, Madeleine and I wanted to really share a little bit. In the chat, we've seen people talking a little bit, some of our other favorite thought leaders like Simon Sinek, like Brene Brown, and how much we appreciate their message and what they're saying about leadership and how leadership can be going forward. And we really share a belief with both of those thought leaders and others that everybody deserves to work for a good manager. And we should be trying to be that type of manager, that type of leader for others. Here's the poll where you can request the information on the coaching research. If you would like to receive information on how to access complimentary, absolutely no charge, the white papers on the coaching research that Madeleine talked about earlier. Also, there was that paper at the very beginning, the study that we did with Training Magazine that identified all the performance management gaps, and there's more. If you'd like information on all of that, go ahead and choose A here on this poll. If you would like to connect with peers who have added coaching curriculum into their leadership development programs, go ahead and choose B. And again, you can choose more than one here, but do go ahead and use the poll and mark B in addition to A. If you would like to specifically talk about your current leadership development curriculum and what are some of the ways that Blanchard can help with bringing coaching skills into that, go ahead and put C into the mix also. So A, B, C, any combination. Once you've made your choices, be sure to hit that submit button. That'll send your responses to us, and we will follow up with you with the information that you requested. Madeleine, we've got a few minutes left, and we've had a couple of questions come in. And let me ask you these, and we'll see how many of these we can get through. And those of you, if you'd like, go ahead and continue to use the chat feature. Ask your question. If we don't get to it right now in this section, we will get back to you individually with a response. The first question came in at the very beginning of your presentation. You talked about the importance of goal setting. And what people are realizing today, you said, do people have clear goals? The answer is many times no. And then the question was, what about in today's environment where it's often ambiguous or ever-changing? What do you suggest for people to help get some clarity around their goals?
Well, I think it's the conversation with the manager. So just kind of either the sit down or the phone call or the email. I mean, so many people don't get any time with their managers at all. So this whole paying attention thing it can be really hard. But as the employee, to push for clarity for these are the things that I'm spending time on. This is the way I'm prioritizing the 900 things that I'm supposed to be doing because I can't do it all. So this is what I am doing. Are these the right things? So check in, ask, and sometimes it has to be over email.
That's great. Thank you, Madeleine. Another question came in, this whole idea of growth. We talked about growth, and we know that growth is an important concept in today's organizations. People more than ever want to be growing in their careers. Who do you feel is responsible for growth? What would you say is the balance between the manager's responsibility for providing growth opportunities and the direct report's responsibility for seeking out and asking for growth opportunities?
So I think the direct report has to drive growth and opportunity. And the reason I say that is I can't be more, as your manager, I can't be more interested in your career than you are. So does that make sense? And I have done that. I have had employees. I'm like, I see this for you. I see that for you. I am a champion for you going here, going there, doing X, Y, Z. And they're like, yeah, no, not interested. So, no. So I think the employee has to drive it, and the manager has to make themselves available and partner.
That's great. Thank you, Matt. Question came in. What's the difference, in your opinion, between coaching and mentoring?
Well, that's a perfect follow-on, actually, to what we were just saying. I think a manager can help an employee to connect with a mentor in the organization. To me, great mentors use the coach approach, use coaching skills, are naturally coaches, have the best interest of their mentee at heart, but they also have expertise and experience either in the organization or in the industry that is also going to be really helpful to the mentee.
Got it. Thank you, Matt. Question came in about, could you give an example of what a forward-focused question would look like? What is that? What is an example of that you may have used with a client in the past? So I'm guessing, maybe they're talking to you about, hey, I did this, I did that, and you're listening. What's an example of a forward-focused question?
What's the most important thing to do next? What's the first step?
Great. Makes perfect sense. Two questions have come in the chat talking a little bit about resistance. Maybe we'll break this into two different parts here. What if it's resistance as you're trying to coach a direct report? We've done that tell your truth quiz, and we've checked off this could be very helpful for them. Maybe you've had some past conversations. They're resistant to it. Let's talk on that personal level first of all. What do you do with someone who's resistant? I mean, do you just stay with it? Is there a point where you say, well, done my best? What's your take?
I think you name it and claim it.
Can you tell us a little more? What does that mean exactly?
I think, say, Dave, you're my you're my direct report, and I want to share something that I think you really need to know, and you're like avoiding me, or you don't want to hear it, or I've said it 5 times and nothing is changing. Then I have to say, you know, my experience is you're avoiding me. My experience is that you don't want to hear this. My experience is that we've had this conversation and I'm not seeing a change. So can we talk about what I'm doing that's causing that situation? Have I hurt your feelings? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm an idiot? What am I doing here that's keeping this from being useful for you?
Got it. Thank you, Matt. And then maybe as a wrap-up question, because we are at the end of our time today, and for those of you who questions we did not get to, we will go ahead and follow up with you afterwards. Also, I'm going to give you all an email address. If you're like me and all of a sudden the question you wanted to ask comes to you as soon as we finish, there's an email box. It's webinars, that's plural, webinars@kenblanchard.com. If you have a question that comes to you a little later today, or maybe when you first wake up tomorrow, send it to webinars@kenblanchard.com. I'll forward that to Madeleine. Madeleine, we talked about resistance on an individual level. To wrap up today's session, if there's an organization, or if we've got people that are on the call today that love what you've talked about bringing coaching into their organization, but they're trying to figure out how do they make the case for it inside of their company, what do you suggest in case they're running into resistance at an organizational level with bringing coaching in?
You know, all you have to do is look at today's news about what millennials want in the workplace and how to keep an engaged workforce. And, you know, I don't think it's just millennials who want more feedback and who want conversations about career growth. I think everybody wants that. Okay, maybe not everybody, but I don't think it's just millennials. And organizations are really fighting hard now to attract the best talent and to keep the best talent. So there's a ton of research out there, not just our white paper, that you can use to support your argument that managers and leaders in the organization need to be using the coach approach and coaching skills. Not all the time, but they need to be able to put that hat on when they need to.
Great. Madeleine, thank you so much for your time today. That went by so quickly. We really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through those 4 essential skills. And thanks to all of you for joining us for today's webinar. We hope you'll join us again for another Blanchard event sometime in the near future. That does conclude today's session. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.